The scrap metal business had always been good to Alex Reed, but finding a completely intact alien research ship floating dead in space was like hitting the jackpot. His small crew of 4 had been scanning the outer rim for weeks, picking up broken satellites and damaged cargo haulers. This was different. This was worth millions if they could get it back to port without anyone else claiming it first. Alex floated through the airlock in his worn spacesuit, helmet light cutting through the darkness inside the alien vessel. The air was thick with dust and the smell of burnt electronics. Whatever had happened here, the crew had left in a hurry. Personal items were scattered on the floor, and several doors had been left wide open. His crew spread out behind him, each carrying scanning equipment to find anything valuable. The ship was built by the Keth, a race known for their advanced medical research. Most of their vessels looked the same from the outside, but this one had extra shielding around the lower decks. Alex had salvaged Keth ships before, and he knew where to find the good stuff. The lower labs always had the most expensive equipment. He made his way through a maze of corridors, following signs written in the flowing Keth script. His translator device worked slowly, but he could make out words like research and classified. The deeper he went, the more his curiosity grew. Why would a medical research ship need this much security? And why had it been abandoned so suddenly? The main laboratory doors had been sealed, but the power failure had left them unlocked. Alex pushed them open and stepped inside. The room was massive, filled with rows of cylindrical pods that reached from floor to ceiling. Most were dark and empty, their glass fronts cracked or completely shattered. Whatever had been inside was long gone, but one pod in the far corner still glowed with a soft blue light. Alex walked over carefully, his boots crunching on broken glass. The pod was about the size of a coffin, filled with some kind of clear liquid. Inside, curled up like a sleeping cat, was something he had never seen before. It looked like a tiny lizard with delicate wings folded against its back. Its scales shimmered even in the dim light, changing from deep blue to silver as Alex moved around the pod. The creature was no bigger than his forearm, and it looked very young. Its eyes were closed, and its chest moved up and down slowly as it breathed. Small bubbles drifted up through the liquid around it. Alex had seen many strange alien creatures in his years of salvage work, but nothing like this. A console next to the pod was still working, its screen flickering with alien text. Alex plugged in his translator and waited as it slowly converted the words. What he read made his heart race. Dracorian juvenile specimen. Age, 6 standard months. Status, hibernating. Warning, last surviving member of species. Dragons. This was a baby dragon. Alex had heard the stories, of course. Everyone in the galaxy knew about dragons, even if most people thought they were just legends. Ancient beings that could breathe fire and fly between stars without ships. The Keth. Researchers had claimed they were all dead, hunted to extinction thousands of years ago, but here was living proof that at least one had survived. The pod systems were failing. Several warning lights blinked red, and the liquid level was dropping. According to the readings, the creature had maybe a few hours before the life support shut down completely. Alex stared at the tiny dragon, watching its peaceful face as it slept. It looked so innocent and helpless. His radio crackled to life. "Alex, we need to move," came the voice of his crew member, Luis. "I'm picking up ships on long-range sensors. Looks like someone else found our prize." Alex knew he should leave. Taking anything from a salvage was risky enough, but taking a living creature was against every regulation in the book. If the authorities found out, he could lose his salvage license and end up in prison. But as he looked at the baby dragon, he couldn't bring himself to walk away. "Give me 5 more minutes," he said into his radio. The pod's control panel was more complex than anything Alex had worked with before, but the basics were universal. He found the emergency release and hesitated for just a moment before pressing it. The liquid began to drain, and the glass front slid open with a soft hiss. The baby dragon's eyes fluttered open as the cold air hit it. They were large and bright green, like polished emeralds. The creature made a soft chirping sound and looked directly at Alex. There was intelligence in those eyes, a curiosity that seemed almost human. Alex reached out slowly and gently lifted the dragon from the pod. It was warm and surprisingly light, its scales smooth like silk. The creature didn't struggle or try to bite. Instead, it pressed against Alex's chest and made that same soft chirping sound, almost like a purr. "Alex, seriously, we need to go. Now!" Luis's voice was urgent. "Those ships are moving fast." Alex tucked the baby dragon inside his jacket, where it curled up against his body heat. He grabbed a small data pad from the console, hoping it contained information about caring for the creature. The sound of his crew running through the corridors echoed through the ship. By the time Alex made it back to their salvage vessel, his crew was already warming up the engines. Luis took one look at the bulge in Alex's jacket and shook his head. "Please tell me you didn't take what I think you took." "It was dying," Alex said simply. "I couldn't just leave it." Their pilot, Beth, was already pulling away from the alien ship. Through the view screen, Alex could see 3 sleek military vessels approaching fast. They had made it out just in time. The baby dragon poked its head out of Alex's jacket and looked around with wide, curious eyes. It chirped again, a sound that made everyone on the bridge smile despite their worries. Beth was the first to speak. "Well, I guess we have a new crew member," she said. "What are you going to call it?" Alex looked down at the tiny creature, its scales catching the light from the control panels. "Ember," he said without hesitation. "Her name is Ember." As their ship jumped into hyperspace, Alex held Ember close and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had saved her life, but he had no idea how to take care of a dragon. All he knew was that leaving her to die had never been an option. Whatever happened next, they would figure it out together. 3 weeks had passed since Alex brought Ember aboard their salvage ship, and the tiny dragon had completely changed their routine. What started as an act of mercy had become something none of them expected. Ember wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, and her intelligence was becoming more obvious every day. Alex watched from his bunk as Ember played with a small metal cube he had given her. She would pick it up in her tiny claws, examine it from every angle, then set it down and push it around with her nose. When it rolled too far away, she would stretch her little wings and glide across the room to get it. Her flight was getting stronger each day, though she still preferred to stay close to Alex. The crew had been nervous about having a dragon on board, but Ember quickly won them over. She seemed to understand that Luis was afraid of her at first, so she would approach him slowly and make soft, chirping sounds until he relaxed. With Beth, she was more playful, often perching on the pilot's shoulder while she worked. And with their engineer Rico, she would sit quietly and watch him repair things, her head tilted like she was trying to learn. But it was with Alex that Ember showed her strongest bond. She followed him everywhere, making distressed sounds when he left her alone for too long. At night, she would curl up on his chest like a cat, her warm body rising and falling with her breathing. Alex found the soft purring sound she made incredibly soothing. The real surprise came when Ember started showing signs of understanding human speech. At first, Alex thought it was just coincidence when she responded to simple commands like, "Come here," or "Stay." But after a few days, it became clear she was actually learning their words. When he said her name, she would look at him immediately. When he pointed to something and named it, she would remember and respond to that word later. Alex had spent hours reading the data pad he took from the research ship, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The Keth files were incomplete, but they painted a picture of a species far more advanced than anyone had realized. Dragons weren't just intelligent animals, they were capable of complex thought and communication. The research notes mentioned something called empathic bonding that dragons did with other species, but the details had been corrupted. One morning, Alex woke to find Ember sitting on his chest, staring at him with those bright green eyes. She made a series of different chirps and clicks, almost like she was trying to talk. When he sat up, she flew to the small desk in his quarters and landed next to a data pad that was displaying star charts. She touched the screen with one claw and looked back at him expectantly. "You want to see the maps?" Alex asked. Ember chirped and touched the screen again. Alex picked up the pad and sat on his bunk. Ember immediately flew back to him and perched on his arm, watching as he scrolled through different star systems. When he showed her a map of the local sector, she became very excited, pointing at specific systems and making urgent sounds. "I don't understand what you're trying to tell me," Alex said softly. Ember seemed frustrated for a moment, then did something that made Alex's heart stop. She opened her mouth and a tiny flame appeared, no bigger than a candle's fire. She held it for just a second before it went out, leaving her panting from the effort. The implications hit Alex immediately. If Ember was developing her fire abilities, what other powers might she have? And more importantly, what would happen when the galaxy found out he had a living dragon? His questions were answered sooner than expected. 2 days later, while they were docked at a small trading station to resupply, Rico came running to Alex's quarters with a panicked expression. "We have a problem," Rico said breathlessly. "Someone knows about Ember. There are people asking questions about our ship, offering money for information about unusual cargo." Alex felt his stomach drop. He had been hoping they could lay low for a while longer, at least until he figured out what to do. But news traveled fast in the outer rim, especially news about something as valuable as a dragon. "How much time do we have?" Alex asked, already starting to pack their few belongings. "Maybe an hour before they figure out which ship is ours," Rico replied. "But Alex, there's something else. I picked up some chatter on the underground channels. Word is spreading fast about a human with a pet dragon. There are already bounties being posted." Ember seemed to sense the tension in the room. She flew to Alex's shoulder and made soft, worried sounds. Alex reached up to stroke her head gently, feeling the smoothness of her scales. "How much are we talking about?" he asked quietly. Rico's face was grim. 50 million credits. Alive. The number hit Alex like a physical blow. 50 million credits was more money than most people saw in a lifetime. It was enough to buy a small fleet of ships or retire on a luxury planet. But it also meant they would never be safe. Every bounty hunter, pirate, and mercenary in the galaxy would be looking for them. Ember chirped softly and nuzzled against Alex's neck, as if she could sense his fear. The gesture made his decision easy. He didn't care about the danger or the money. He wasn't going to let anyone hurt her. "Tell the others we're leaving now," Alex said. "Plot a course for the outer territories. We need to disappear for a while." As Rico ran to prepare the ship, Alex sat on his bunk with Ember in his lap. She looked up at him with those trusting green eyes, completely unaware of the storm that was gathering around them. Alex had rescued her from certain death, but now he wondered if he had just doomed them both to a life of running and hiding. But then Ember did something that changed his perspective entirely. She reached up with one small claw and gently touched his face, making the softest purring sound he had ever heard. In that moment, Alex realized that saving her hadn't been a mistake. Whatever came next, whatever dangers they would face, it was worth it for this connection they had found. "Don't worry, little one," he whispered, scratching behind her tiny horns. "I won't let anyone hurt you. We'll figure this out together." Ember seemed to understand. She settled more comfortably in his lap and closed her eyes, trusting him completely. As their ship lifted off from the station and jumped to hyperspace, Alex made a silent promise that no matter what it took, he would keep her safe. The galaxy might see her as a prize to be won, but to him, she was family. Life on the run was harder than Alex had imagined. For 2 months they had jumped from system to system, never staying in one place long enough to feel safe. The bounty on Ember had grown to 75 million credits, and the hunters were getting closer each time. Alex could see the stress wearing on his crew, but none of them had suggested giving up Ember. She had become part of their family. Ember herself was growing rapidly. She was now the size of a small dog, her wings strong, enough for sustained flight around the ship's corridors. Her scales had deepened in color, shifting from silver blue to a rich emerald that matched her eyes. Most remarkably, her intelligence continued to develop at an incredible pace. She could understand complex conversations and had started making sounds that were clearly attempts at human speech. They were hiding in an abandoned mining station in a dead system when everything went wrong. Alex thought they had been careful, but somehow the hegemony had found them. The first sign of trouble was when Beth noticed ships dropping out of hyperspace all around the station. Too many ships, too well organized. "Alex, get to the bridge now." Beth's voice came over the intercom, tight with fear. "We've got company." Alex ran through the corridors with Ember flying beside him, her wings beating fast to keep up. The bridge was chaos when they arrived. Rico was frantically trying to get their engines online while Luis worked the weapon systems. Through the view screen, Alex could see at least 6 hegemony warships surrounding the station. "How did they find us?" Alex demanded. "Does it matter?" Beth shot back, her hands dancing over the pilot controls. "They're demanding we surrender Ember. They've got enough firepower to turn this station into dust." The communications board lit up with an incoming signal. A face appeared on the main screen, belonging to a hegemony commander with the typical purple skin and silver eyes of her species. Her voice was cold and professional when she spoke. "Human vessel, you are harboring stolen property belonging to the hegemony. Surrender the dragon specimen immediately and you will be allowed to leave unharmed." Alex stepped forward, Ember perched on his shoulder. The tiny dragon was making low, worried sounds, pressing close to his neck. "She's not property," Alex said, firmly. "She's a living being and I won't hand her over to be experimented on." The commander's expression didn't change. "The creature is the last of its species and represents invaluable scientific data. Your emotional attachment is irrelevant. You have 5 minutes to comply or we will take the specimen by force." The signal cut off, leaving them in tense silence. Alex could feel Ember trembling against his shoulder, and he reached up to comfort her. Even with her growing intelligence, she was still just a child facing forces she couldn't understand. "Ideas?" Alex asked his crew. Rico shook his head grimly. "Our ship isn't built for combat. We've got some mining lasers, but nothing that could scratch their hull plating." "The station has some old defense turrets," Luis offered, "but they haven't been maintained in years. Probably won't even fire." Beth was studying her sensor readings with a frown. "Wait a minute, this isn't right. I'm reading massive energy buildups in their weapon systems, but they're not targeting us. They're targeting the station's reactor core." Alex felt ice in his veins. "They're not planning to take her alive." Before anyone could respond, the hegemony ships opened fire. But instead of destroying their small salvage vessel, the beams lanced toward the station's power core. The entire structure shuddered as explosions echoed through the metal corridors. "They're trying to trap us here," Beth realized. "Disable the station so we can't escape, then board us when we're helpless." That was when Ember surprised everyone. The little dragon suddenly launched herself from Alex's shoulder and flew directly at the view screen, pressing her tiny claws against the glass as she stared at the attacking ships. Her body began to glow with an inner light, and the temperature on the bridge rose noticeably. "Ember, what are you doing?" Alex reached for her but stopped when he saw her eyes. They were no longer the bright green he knew. They had turned a brilliant gold, and they seemed to hold an ancient intelligence far beyond her apparent age. The little dragon opened her mouth and let out a sound unlike anything she had made before. It wasn't a chirp or a purr, but a deep, resonant call that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then their sensors went completely insane. "Alex, you need to see this," Rico called out, his voice filled with amazement. "Energy signatures are appearing all over the system. Dozens of them. Big ones." Through the view screen, they watched in awe as massive shapes began emerging from hyperspace. Dragons. Adult dragons. Each one larger than a hegemony warship, with scales that gleamed like polished metal and wings that blotted out the stars. They moved with a grace that made the alien vessels look clumsy by comparison. The hegemony commander's face reappeared on their screen, but her professional calm had been replaced by obvious terror. "All ships, withdraw immediately. We are not equipped for this level of resistance." But the dragons had other plans. One of them, a massive creature with scales like liquid silver, positioned itself directly between the hegemony fleet and the mining station. When it opened its mouth, a stream of superheated plasma erupted forth, striking the lead warship's shields and overloading them instantly. The other dragons joined the attack, their plasma breath carving through the hegemony vessels like they were made of paper. The aliens tried to return fire, but their weapons seemed pathetically weak against the dragon's natural armor. Within minutes, the entire fleet was either destroyed or fleeing in terror. Ember had collapsed from exhaustion after her strange call, and Alex caught her gently as she fell. She was breathing hard, her small body hot to the touch. The golden glow in her eyes faded back to their normal green, and she looked up at him with confusion, as if she didn't understand what had just happened. The largest dragon, the silver one that had led the attack, approached their ship slowly. Its massive eye, easily larger than their entire bridge, peered through the viewscreen at them. When it spoke, its voice resonated through their communication system without any technological interface. "Little sister is safe now," the ancient voice said, and Alex could hear both power and gentleness in its tone. "We felt her call across the void. She has chosen her guardian well." Alex found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "You came because of Ember?" "The young one carries the memories of our kind," the dragon replied. "Through her we have watched the small human who chose compassion over profit. You protected her when you could have sold her. You fed her when you had little food. You held her when she was afraid. Such acts do not go unnoticed." The dragon's massive head tilted slightly, studying Alex with an intelligence that made him feel very small. "The galaxy will know of this day, human. Word will spread that the dragons have returned, and they remember their friends as well as their enemies." As quickly as they had appeared, the dragons began to vanish back into hyperspace. The silver dragon was the last to leave, its parting words echoing in their ship long after it was gone. "Keep the little one safe, Alex Reed. Her time of awakening approaches, and she will need your guidance more than ever." Ember stirred in Alex's arms, making weak, chirping sounds. She was exhausted but unharmed, and when she looked up at him, he could swear he saw a flash of that ancient intelligence still lingering in her green eyes. "Well," Beth said quietly, breaking the stunned silence on the bridge. "I guess we're not hiding anymore." Alex nodded, still holding Ember close. The dragon attack had been a message to the entire galaxy. Anyone who wanted to harm Ember would have to face consequences beyond their imagination. But it also meant their quiet life was over. From now on, they would be at the center of events that could reshape the balance of power among the stars. As their ship limped away from the damaged mining station, Alex made a new promise to the sleeping dragon in his arms. Whatever came next, whatever role they were meant to play in the larger story unfolding around them, he would be ready. Ember had chosen him as her guardian, and he would not let her down. The message from Earth's Colonial Defense Force arrived 3 days after the dragon attack made galactic news. Alex stared at the official communication on his screen, reading it for the 4th time. The CDF was offering them sanctuary, protection, and resources to care for Ember. All they had to do was come to the nearest military base for evaluation and consultation. Alex didn't trust it for a second, but they were running out of options. Every smuggler's haven and pirate port in the Yedon Outer Rim had suddenly become too dangerous. The hegemony wasn't the only faction interested in Ember anymore. Word had spread that dragons were not extinct, and every government, corporation, and warlord wanted to get their hands on the key to that power. Ember had grown noticeably since her mysterious call to the dragons. She was now the size of a large dog, her intelligence sharper than ever. She could speak a few human words, though her voice was still high and musical. More concerning to Alex was the way she sometimes stared, off into space as if listening to something no one else could hear. "We don't have much choice," Beth said during their crew meeting. "The fuel cells are almost empty and we can't dock anywhere without being recognized." Rico nodded reluctantly. "The CDF base at New Geneva is only 2 jumps away, if we're going. To trust anyone, it might as well be our own species." Luis wasn't convinced. "You really think they'll just let us walk away after they see what she can do? Governments don't work that way." Alex looked at Ember, who was perched on the edge of the table following their conversation intently. When their eyes met, she tilted her head and made a soft questioning sound. He could see trust in her expression, complete faith that he would make the right decision. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than ever. We go to New Geneva, Alex decided. But we stay, ready to run if things go wrong. The CDF base was a massive orbital platform surrounded by defensive satellites and patrol ships. As they approached, Alex felt his stomach tighten with worry. This was either salvation or the biggest mistake of his life. Ember seemed to sense his tension and moved to sit in his lap, purring softly in the way that always calmed him. They were escorted to a docking bay by 2 military fighters, their weapons powered but not aimed. A diplomatic touch, Alex thought, but the message was clear. The moment they landed, their ship was surrounded by Marines in full combat gear. Admiral Kate Stone was waiting for them in the docking bay, a tall woman with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She studied Ember with obvious fascination, as Alex carried her down the ship's ramp but made no move to approach. "Mr. Reed," the Admiral said formally. "Thank you for coming. I promise you'll be treated fairly, but I'm sure you understand the significance of what you've brought us." Alex held Ember a little tighter. "She's not a thing to be brought, Admiral. She's a person, a very young person who's been through enough trauma already." Admiral Stone's expression softened slightly. "Of course. Poor choice of words. Would you be willing to participate in a consultation? We have xenobiologists and linguists who would very much like to meet her." The next few hours were a blur of examinations, interviews, and tests. Ember handled it all with remarkable grace, though she refused to leave Alex's side. She answered questions when she could, demonstrated her growing vocabulary, and even showed them her small flame ability. But Alex could see she was getting tired and overwhelmed. Dr. Kim Park, the base's chief xenobiologist, was clearly amazed by what she observed. "Her neural development is unlike anything in our databases," she explained to Admiral Stone. "The cognitive complexity we're seeing should take decades to develop in most species, but she's achieving it in months." "What are the implications?" the Admiral asked. "If dragons mature this quickly intellectually, then the stories about their advanced civilization might be true. We could be looking at a species that surpasses human intelligence by several orders of magnitude." That evening, Alex was given quarters in the officers' section of the base. Ember immediately made herself comfortable on the bed, though she kept looking toward the large windows that showed the stars outside. She seemed restless, making soft sounds that Alex had learned meant she was thinking hard about something. "What's bothering you, little one?" he asked, sitting beside her on the bed. Ember looked at him with those bright green eyes and spoke in her careful musical voice. "Others coming. Soon." "What others? More dragons?" She nodded, then did something that made Alex's heart stop. She walked over to the room's computer terminal and placed one small claw on the interface panel. The screen immediately came alive with star charts, tactical displays, and communication logs that she shouldn't have been able to access. "Ember, how are you doing that?" Instead of answering, she manipulated the displays with remarkable skill, showing him fleet movements and encrypted messages. Alex realized she was somehow interfacing directly with the computer systems, reading information that was supposed to be classified. The door to their quarters suddenly opened, and Admiral Stone entered with 2 guards. Her face was grim as she saw the classified displays on the screen. "Step away from the terminal, Mr. Reed." "She's not doing anything wrong," Alex protested, moving protectively in front of Ember. "She's just curious." "Curious enough to break through our highest-level security protocols?" Admiral Stone's voice was cold. "Do you have any idea what information she just accessed?" Ember stepped out from behind Alex, her small form somehow commanding attention despite her size. When she spoke, her voice carried an authority that seemed impossible for such a young creature. "Need to show, need to prepare, they come in 3 days." The Admiral stared at her. "Who comes?" "The hegemony." Ember shook her head and touched the computer terminal again. The screen filled with sensor data showing massive energy signatures moving through hyperspace. Dozens of them, all heading toward their location. "Family comes," Ember said simply. "Need to decide. Help or leave." Admiral Stone studied the data with growing alarm. "These signatures are enormous, bigger than anything in our fleet. The adult dragons, Alex realized. They're coming here. Ember nodded. Heard call. Heard little sister safe with good humans. Want to meet. Want to see if story's true. What stories? The Admiral asked. Ember's eyes seemed to hold depths of knowledge far beyond her apparent age. Stories of humans who protect small things, who choose right over easy, who make friends, not slaves. The implications hit Alex like a physical blow. This wasn't just about Ember anymore. Humanity was about to face first contact with an ancient species that could either become their greatest ally or their most dangerous enemy. And somehow, his relationship with one small dragon had become the test that would determine which it would be. Admiral Stone was already on her communicator, calling for an emergency meeting of the base command staff. As the room filled with officers and scientists all talking at once about preparations and protocols, Alex sat on the bed with Ember in his lap. "Are you scared?" he asked her quietly. Ember considered this for a moment, then looked up at him with complete trust. "Not scared. Have Alex. Alex keeps safe." In that moment, Alex realized that the next few days would determine not just their fate, but possibly the future of both species. The small act of mercy that had started with rescuing a dying baby dragon was about to reshape the galaxy. All because a human had chosen compassion over profit, and a young dragon had chosen to trust him completely. The attack came exactly when Ember said it would 3 days later, just as the first dragon ships were detected at the edge of the system. But it wasn't the dragons who brought violence to New Geneva base. It was the combined forces of 6 different factions, all desperate to capture or kill Ember before humanity could form an alliance with the dragons. Alex woke to blaring alarms and the sound of explosions echoing through the base's hull. Ember was already awake, standing at the window with her scales glowing faintly in distress. Outside, he could see the flashes of weapons fire as enemy ships poured out of hyperspace, overwhelming the base's defenses through sheer numbers. "They're not here to negotiate?" Admiral Stone's voice came over the intercom system. "All personnel to emergency stations, this is not a drill." Alex grabbed his emergency kit and scooped Ember into his arms. She had grown again over the past 3 days, now nearly the size of a medium dog, but she still felt light as he carried her through corridors filled with running soldiers and flashing emergency lights. The command center was chaos when they arrived. Tactical displays showed enemy forces attacking from multiple vectors while the base's defensive systems struggled to respond. Admiral Stone looked up as they entered, her face grim but determined. "The dragons are still 6 hours out," she reported. "We need to hold until they get here, but I'm not sure we can. We're outnumbered 20-1. Through the main view screen, Alex could see the largest enemy vessel, a massive hegemony dreadnought, moving into attack position. Its weapons were charging for what looked like a killing blow aimed directly at the command center. That was when Ember did something that changed everything. She jumped from Alex's arms and flew directly to the center of the room, landing on the main tactical display. Her small form began to glow with an inner light that grew brighter and brighter until everyone had to shield their eyes. When she opened her mouth, the sound that came out was nothing like her usual voice. It was the voice of the deep void between stars, ancient and powerful beyond comprehension. Words in a language that predated most civilizations flowed from her tiny throat, and the base's computer systems responded as if they recognized the commands. Screens throughout the facility flickered and came alive with new information, new capabilities that shouldn't have existed. "Impossible," Dr. Park whispered, staring at her readings. "She's interfacing with our entire network simultaneously, the processing power required." But Alex wasn't watching the computers. He was watching Ember herself, seeing the way her young face had taken on an expression of terrible wisdom. For just a moment he glimpsed what she might become when she was fully grown, and it was both beautiful and terrifying. The base's defenses suddenly came alive with precision and power that shouldn't have been possible. Defensive turrets that had been struggling to track enemy fighters now moved with perfect accuracy. Shield generators that had been overloading found new reserves of power. Most remarkably, the base's long-range communications array began broadcasting, a signal unlike anything in human technology. "What is she doing?" Admiral Stone demanded. "Calling for help," Alex said, though he wasn't sure how he knew. "She's calling her family." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Space around New Geneva base suddenly filled with dragons, not the dozen or so they had been expecting, but hundreds of them. Ancient beings of incredible size and power, their scales gleaming like jewels as they emerged from hyperspace with a grace that made the enemy ships look clumsy and primitive. The largest dragon, the same silver giant that had saved them at the mining station, positioned itself between the base and the hegemony dreadnought. When it spoke, its voice carried across all communication frequencies, reaching every ship in the system. "You attack our sister and her chosen guardian. This will not be tolerated." What followed was less a battle than a demonstration. The dragons moved through the enemy fleet like dancers, their plasma breath carving through shields and armor with effortless precision. They didn't kill unnecessarily, but they made it clear that resistance was pointless. Within minutes, the surviving enemy ships were fleeing in terror or surrendering unconditionally. As the immediate threat ended, Ember's glow began to fade. She swayed on her feet, exhausted from the effort of coordinating such massive forces. Alex caught her as she fell, cradling her small form as she looked up at him with eyes that were once again those of a tired child. "Did good?" she asked weakly. "You did perfect, little one," Alex whispered, holding her close. The silver dragon approached the base slowly, its massive form dwarfing even the largest human vessels. When it spoke again, its voice was gentle despite its power. "The young one has shown us much about your species, humans of Earth. We have watched many civilizations rise and fall, but few have impressed us as yours has today." Admiral Stone stepped forward, though Alex could see her hands shaking slightly. "We're honored by your presence. We hope this can be the beginning of friendship between our peoples." "Friendship," the dragon repeated, as if tasting the word. "Yes, that is what the little sister has taught us to expect from humans. She chose her guardian well. Through his kindness to her, we have learned that humanity possesses something rare among the stars, the wisdom to protect rather than exploit." Over the following hours, as more dragons arrived and formal contact was established, Alex learned the truth about Ember's nature. She wasn't just the last dragon, she was something far more significant. She was what they called a memory keeper, born with the accumulated knowledge and experiences of her entire species. Her rapid growth and incredible abilities were the result of accessing genetic memories that went back thousands of years. She was meant to awaken when our people were ready to return to the galaxy, the silver dragon explained. But the Keth found her first, tried to study her like a specimen. If you had not saved her, if you had not shown her the kindness that awakened her trust in your species, this day might have ended very differently. Dr. Park was fascinated by the scientific implications. The quantum processing power required to store and access that much information, it's beyond our current understanding. "Understanding will come," the dragon replied. "Our peoples have much to teach each other. But first, there is the matter of the young one's future." All eyes turned to Ember, who was sitting quietly in Alex's lap following the conversation with alert interest. She looked up at the massive dragon, then at Alex, then back to the dragon. "Stay with Alex," she said firmly in her small, clear voice. "Alex is family." The silver dragon's equivalent of a smile was a gentle rumbling sound. "Of course, little sister. The guardian bond you have formed is sacred. But perhaps it is time for both of you to accept a larger role. The galaxy is changing, and it will need guides who understand both dragon wisdom and human compassion." Admiral Stone leaned forward. "What are you proposing?" "An alliance," the dragon said. "Not just between our governments, but between our peoples. Let this base become the first embassy between dragons and humans. Let Alex Reed and our sister Ember serve as the bridge between our kinds." Alex felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. He looked down at Ember, who gazed back at him with complete trust. In her eyes, he could see echoes of the ancient intelligence she carried, but also the young creature who still curled up on his chest every night. "What do you think, little one?" he asked softly. "Ready for another adventure?" Ember's answer was to nuzzle against his neck and purr, the same sound she had made the first day he held her. Some things, Alex realized, would never change no matter how much she grew or how powerful she became. The bond they had formed in that moment of rescue would last forever. As dragons and humans began the delicate work of building a new alliance, Alex watched through the windows as young dragons played, with human children in the base's common areas. Their laughter mixed together, a sound of joy that seemed to promise a future brighter than either species could have achieved alone. It had all started with one moment of compassion, one decision to save a helpless creature rather than walk away. Now, as Alex held Ember and watched her family and his species taking their first steps toward friendship, he understood that the smallest acts of kindness could indeed change the galaxy. Sometimes all it took was one person willing to do the right thing, even when it seemed impossible. The rest, as he had learned, would follow naturally from that first choice to care for something small and vulnerable in a vast and often uncaring universe.